You're listening to the We Are Libertarians podcast network. Find all of our shows at wearelibertarians.com.
For those of you listeners who know my background a bit, you might remember the stories of my first few jobs after college. From being a mall cop to selling makeup door to door, I realized that I had skills that were being underutilized and that these minimum wage jobs couldn't support me or last forever. I spent years going through YouTube, reading books, listening to podcasts, and taking enough online courses to reinvent myself as a professional copywriter and digital marketer. Years later, thanks to my side hustles and drive, I've worked with national news outlets, multi-million-dollar tech startups, nonprofits, and celebrities to build their brands and drive sales. None of this could have happened if I didn't develop in-demand skills. I had to do this alone, but you don't have to. You have Hustlers University 2.0. Hustlers University 2.0 is a community where you can learn real skills to earn money online today, starting with side hustles you can use to elevate your game. I'm not just an advocate for Hustlers University, I'm also a student. Every professor is verified to be making $10K to $500K monthly in their selected field. You get full resources, lesson plans, and an active community of thousands of other Hustlers University students working on skills such as stock analysis, cryptocurrencies, e-commerce, copywriting, which was my favorite course, one I actually went ahead and took last month. And as a copywriter of 7 years, I even took a ton out of that, including some of the resources I was able to take over to my day job. You also learn freelancing, financial planning, affiliate marketing, business management, and so much more. If you're tired of depending on a boss who hates you to deliver your paycheck, or have learned since the lockdowns that controlling the source of your income is vital to your individual freedom, sign up for Hustlers University 2.0 today using the link in the show notes. I'll see you there.
You dream of in your lifetime. You're listening to On the Run with Remso W. Martinez.
There it is. I can hear you now.
Hey, perfect. What's
awesome.
up, brother?
Nothing much, man. Good to have you on.
I'm glad to be here, man.
Yeah, so I'm not a real professional, so I just like to jump into the conversation since I've already got my mindset on this. Justin, there are 3 people who helped get me into jiu-jitsu, and they all have nothing to do with each other. One was Anthony Bourdain. I went ahead and saw an interview he did where he talked about his love of jiu-jitsu, and there's this crazy video online when he got his blue belt, I think 6-7 years ago, where he actually competed in a tournament, and he didn't look like the drug addict, chronic smoking, drinking Anthony Bourdain we all think of. He looked healthy, and he looked alive, and he kicked ass. The second one is Joe Rogan because he won't stop talking about it. And the third person is you, because you used to post all these awesome photos of you grappling dudes and succeeding and doing something outside of your day-to-day job. And I was like, shoot, that looks pretty freaking cool. And then when I started getting involved, you really helped motivate me and mentor me as I was really just like, getting into it. Like my white belt was still white.
Right.
So I want to start off the show just by thanking you for being there at the beginning days. And now I'm only a few months away from my 1 year mark, and it has been transformative.
No, I'm glad to hear that, man. I'm glad to be on the same list as Joe Rogan for something.
It's wild. I think for listeners, I've done a few episodes talking about my first my first season in jiu-jitsu and everything, and it has been a lot of getting my ass kicked. It's been a lot of me having to pressure through a lot of stuff I was really uncomfortable with. And it's also been one of the best decisions I've made in my life. And I really don't say that lightly. It's brought me community. It's brought my confidence back. I mean, there was the physical stuff, sure, but I mean, just feeling like there was something genuinely set aside just for me that wasn't work related, that wasn't related to making money, that wasn't related to anything else I had really pitched my life to. It became a real place where I could just focus on something that was just absolutely for me. So I kind of want to turn the spotlight on you for a minute. When did you start doing jiu-jitsu? Did you always have a martial arts background? I mean, what kind of jump started that journey for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I grew up, same in the 90s, watching UFC and stuff like that. So, I had an, early exposure to jiu-jitsu. But, there wasn't even in like the 90s and early 2000s. And I lived in Southern California, there, even where I lived, there weren't a lot of, gyms near where I was living with my parents, but my parents had put me in karate because, that was like what everybody did, in the early days for martial arts. Like everybody knew what karate was. So, I had like a super white sensei named Sensei Tony, and he was this Japanese, this expert karate guy, apparently, so I did that for probably like a year or two, as a kid, learned some kicks and strikes, but, and it kind of was like, kind of gave you a false confidence, I feel like I did it. I was in there just like literally just beating up chicks, but I'm like, she's a higher belt than me, so it's okay. She's bigger than me, and I can
take on the world.
I know karate. And then, you get like punched in the face and you're like, oh wait, you have pads on and helmets and it's just different. And then, so I did that for a little bit, but then I always really wanted to do jiu-jitsu. Like even at the early age, I would just like watch the UFC and I'd practice with my friends, some moves and stuff. We were, doing it totally wrong, but it looked cool though. Like takedowns and arm bars. And then, when I was in high school, I met a guy in wrestling, and we were about to graduate, and he was like, hey man, what are you doing after high school? And I was like, I'm going to college in the area. He's like, do you want to come do some jiu-jitsu with me at the gym in our town? I'm like, oh, there's a gym here? Yeah, man, sure. So I go to this gym with him, and I still remember to this day, it was Bakersfield Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, the black belt, Matt Baker. He's just an absolute beast. I think he's a fourth degree black belt under John Jack Machado. Just an absolute savage. And third or fourth, but he's the guy. And I go in there and I'm just like rolling around, getting just massacred by people. Just like what is happening? I think I can do something, but I'm just getting just destroyed. And I loved it. Like that first day, I was like, oh yeah, this is my jam. And the coach comes up to me after practice and he's like, hey, I know it's like your first day, but we're going to a tournament tomorrow. Do you want to go with us and compete? And I was like, yeah, let's go. And I end up, day two, I'm in Torrance, I think it was Torrance, California. And I'm at like John Jack Machado's school at his academy. And he's one of the referees. And I'm like a cherry white belt. Like I had to buy a gi that day at his school, and I lost both of my matches. I was trying to submit a guy while I was in his guard, and my coach is just yelling at me. He's just like, that's not possible. Stop it. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, day two of jiu-jitsu. I'm like, oh, it's possible. I'm trying to cross collar choke this guy while I'm in his guard. Like
I saw that Hoist Gracie video one time. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah. I'll show you, coach, and I'm losing. And then, my second opponent comes out and I'm like, well, I lost my first match. Maybe my second guy will be easier. This guy comes out. He's like 5 times my height. He's like 6'5", super long. And he just lays on me and smothers me and wins. And I still had fun. I was like, oh, this was great. So I trained there, get back on the track. I trained there for a while, graduated, joined the Army. Did some of the combative stuff at basic, and it's in combatives in the Army at the entry level is just people, it's like fighting with an older brother. There really is a lot of punched. Yeah, there's no technique. It's pretty much all like first person to get a Kimura or an Americana, and then they go 100% muscle on it. So, but that was fun. Kind of did that, and then I met a guy when I was going through the at Fort Bragg. They had a combative school. And I was doing level 1, and I'd come back for level 2, and there was a guy there. I thought he was like a special forces guy because he had like a beard. He looked kind of like a civilian. And I'm like, who is this guy? Like he's not even he doesn't have a uniform. And turns out he was a Hoist Gracie black belt named was it Roy Marsh? Not Roy Marsh. just you getting old, memory starts going. His name is Roy. I don't remember his last name, but
Roy with the beard.
Yeah. It was Roy Marsh, and he was a black belt with the team in the area, and he was traveling, and now he's the only Hoist Gracie black belt in Germany. He's an instructor up there. He's a great guy. But I was talking to him, and because he knew all these moves, like we only know like 12 moves in combatives too, and he's out there showing us how to do stuff. I'm like, damn, this guy's crazy good, wrist locking us and all kinds of stuff. I'm like, what is happening? And he's like, yeah, you should check out the team in the area and train there and look into it. I'm like, okay. So I train a little bit with the team that's in North Carolina, and then when I moved up to Virginia, the affiliate of that school was up here, so I started training there. So it was just kind of like, a little bit here, a little bit here. I'm like the classic, jiu-jitsu guy, where it was like I was someplace 5 months, and you go to new school, and you start all over, and then you move cities, you go to new school, so you're constantly getting exposure, but you're never at anywhere long enough to get like rank, Mm-hmm. And so like you just travel around, and I took like 5 years off for work. And then I got back into it. I was like, you know what? I need this. Like, I missed it. I got to get back into it. And then doing it again for the last 2 years, just getting back on track, trying to move up, trying to keep training and get my skills down. But yeah, it's been a trip, man. It's been a journey, but through it all, I got to say it's worth it. I mean, like what you said with the health, the mental health, just the exercise, the community, like doing jiu-jitsu is probably one of the best things you can just do for your life in general. No matter who you are, because it really forces you to just focus on one thing, and at the same time, it helps you like relieve stress. It lets you choke people. Like instead of you having a random outburst at work and choking somebody there, you just wait till you go to do jiu-jitsu and you choke your friends. So
oh my gosh, there was my school started offering like 5:45 and 6 a.m. classes.
Oh, so, yes. I call those the breakfast club.
Those have been amazing. And I don't know why I'm so excited to wake up for those in the morning, because I never enjoyed waking up for 5 a.m. PT. But yeah. It was one of those things where it's like, if I can get through an hour of that in the morning, the rest of the day, I'm just like on cruise control.
You just feel so good. You're like, all right.
That guy just flipped me the bird while I'm driving to work. My boss is mad at me. Like, it's just one of those things where everything is just muted just a little bit. But I mean, it's funny how you mentioned karate at the beginning. My brother Ryan's a first degree black belt in Taekwondo, and I was a brown belt. I since I'm older, like, because we moved around so much, I actually had to start up twice from white belt. So and ironically, both times, because I switched associations, mid move. I always got up to brown belt. But when Ryan and I were competing in Taekwondo in Texas, where we kind of started, I thought we were kicking ass and taking names. Like, we were good for everyone else just doing Taekwondo. But I'll never forget, I was at Marion Military Institute, and one of the other cadets, we went over to the gym. And I don't know what started it. Like, it was a friend of mine. We were just gonna like spar. It was like, oh, I've done wrestling and a little bit of jiu-jitsu, and you've done Taekwondo, Martinez. Like, let's see it. I thought I was like, Jean-Claude Van Damme. I got destroyed, and this guy was like half my size. I had like a good 20 pounds on him too. And I just remember, like, I'm being manhandled by a midget. I don't know what is happening. And I just remember it was like the biggest feeling of humiliation, but we went round after round after round. And I always had to be the person to strike first, which I was like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And he never hit me. He would just like take me down. And he would do like this crazy Spider-Man shit all over me, and he's like flipping around, and I'm just like, this leprechaun is like choking me out. Like, what's wrong with this? But that was one of the first times I realized like something is not working, and it gets to the point where it's just like, maybe the system that you were taught works against other people fighting by the same rules and stuff like that. But ultimately, what I had was I had more height, I had more reach, and I had more weight on this person. When I was on the ground, I was useless. That stuck with me for years. That's when I realized it's like, everything I'd basically been taught doesn't apply if I'm playing by Taekwondo rules. And this goes for any other type of martial arts discipline, kind of like that. And this person is playing to win, which is get him down as fast as possible, submit him as fast as possible, and keep him down. And that's what kind of did it for me. At that point, I was just like, yeah, this is not working.
Yeah, it was like an eye opener for you, and you realize that. What I noticed with jiu-jitsu too is that like it makes you more aware of like violence and how chaotic violence is. Where you're now, when you start doing martial arts, start doing jiu-jitsu, you get comfortable, rolling and submitting people and things, and you become better at violence. And at the same time, you're like less likely to want to get into a physical altercation with somebody. Like when I did karate, like, I mean, again, it was just like, Sensei Tony, it was basically like Cobra Kai, like I go kick the other kids, and I'm out there doing it. But when I even as a little kid doing karate, it gave you that false sense of confidence and made you want to go kick. I want to go punch stuff and stuff. And then, I would get in a few altercations where I'd go to a friend's house for like a barbecue, and I probably was like in the 5th grade, and my friend, her it was a set of siblings, brother and sister, but their cousins would come over, and they're like 15, and so they're like older than us, and they're big kids, and one of our brothers at the time, I think he was 18. Our cousins was like, he was already in the Navy, and he was boxing in the Navy. Yeah, I'm in the 5th and 6th grade. I'm still a kid, but I do karate, so I'm like, I can punch, I can strike, let's go. And we used to put on like boxing gloves, and this kid as a grown man would just beat me to death, like just punch, like bam, bam, bam. And I was just like, man, like there is nothing I can do against this guy with my kicks and strikes. Like I weigh like 90 pounds. I can't I can't hurt him. And then you get into jiu-jitsu, and then you can just absolutely choke. I was rolling with a guy at my gym the other day who weighs 200 plus pounds, like probably almost 300 pounds. And we were on the ground rolling around, and I could control him. I could not do that with karate.
No, there have been
break my back like Bane, like,
yeah. You think darkness is your ally? There was a moment recently where I started remembering like my very first class. I went to the adult gi class at Crossover Jiu-Jitsu here in Wauwatosa, Wisconsin. And the Wednesday class is like the ball breaker class. That's where you go to like, everyone is just breathing heavy at the end of the class, hating their life, but also feeling awesome. And I remember this was my first class. I hadn't been taught anything. It was like half the class was learning one thing, and the rest of it was live rolling. And I'm just like, what the hell? Like, do I need a cup or something? Like I had no clue what was happening. And this woman who's probably about 4 or 5 years younger than me does not look like she's in the best of shape and everything. And I'm just thinking like, oh, they paired me with her because we have no clue what.
Right.
No, she knew what she was doing.
Yeah, you got set up, my friend.
it was like it was another moment where I'm just like, I have no clue what's going on, and I feel powerless. This shorter, younger, woman is just like flipping me around and stuff, and like putting her arm around my neck, and I'm just like, she's not even that strong, but like I'm tapping out like every 5 seconds. After that class, I went and I actually blacked out in my car for 20 minutes. Like I just remember that there was somebody walking by, and they were just like, is he all right? And they're just like, yeah, just let him sit there. And, so that was like class 1. There was a class last week where we have a new student who has been going to our no gi class, and he's a Marine Corps reservist. Now I'm probably older than him by about, I want to say like 6-7 years. He is in way better shape than me. He's a muscular guy about my same height, and he's still in. So I'm thinking like, I've been out for a while and I've gained some weight. I'm like, this guy's gonna freaking kill me. No matter how much I've learned, this guy's gonna kill me. I went 3 rounds with him, and I submitted him 3 times.
Yeah.
And it was one of those moments where I'm just like, holy shit, like this actually worked. Like here
This
I
works.
am. I'm like, holy shit. Like I have learned like, you know, the dark side of the force or something. Like I am taking this guy down. Like if people on the street looked at both of us, they're going to think that guy's going to murder me. But I took him down. And I mean, he's a great sport about it. He's really interested in learning. I hope he comes back. He's going to be lethal one day because he has the athleticism. Right. All he needs is the technique. So he's going to be harder for me to submit. But it was one of those moments where it's just like, I think Jocko Willink says it. If there's a superpower on earth, it's jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. No, that's so true. When you take on somebody who, like, you know, physically is stronger, taller, then most people will look at the two and be like, oh, that guy would win. And you just dominate them. For new people coming into jiu-jitsu, just like you said with the girl, that messes your mind up. I mean, I've rolled with a lot of people in my time, and you know, strong guys, you know, fat guys, all kinds of people. And what messed me up the most was, I'll tell you the story. It's pretty wild. I went to that Goran Ryan seminar up in Jersey. Mm-hmm. I was like, I got to go meet the king, man. I got to go meet the king of our sport. I'm going. So I show up. I drive 8.5 hours after work to Jersey. I get there. I'm like my back straight. Like I didn't stop. You know, I stopped once for gas. My body's all cramping up in the car. I'm like, I get out, I'm stretching. I'm like, I'm so exhausted. I walk into Tom DeBlas's school. So I meet him, talk to his front desk lady. She says, we actually got a no-gi class going on right now if you want to just hop on in. And I'm like, yeah, let's go.
It's only been 8 hours. Like, let's do this.
Let's stretch my legs, right? So I put on my rash guard, walk on the mat. You know, it's time for open rolling time, right? So go with one guy. He's like a wrestler. He like straight up suplexes me. We scramble it out. I would go with one guy, beat him. I'm like, yeah, all right, I'm doing good. Let's go. And then I look over and there's this guy. He's about 145 pounds, right? Just looks cool. Looks kind of like a young kid, like maybe 20 years old. So I say, hey man, you want to roll? And he's just like, you know, he's like, sure. I'm like, all right, let's go, man. You know, and
the introvert but deadly ones.
Yeah, 0.01 seconds. He heel hooks me, and I'm like, okay, let's do that again. I'm like, all right, maybe that was a fluke, right? Shake it off, right? Knuckle bump, we go again. Heel hooks me again. You know, 2 seconds later, you know, in like 6 minutes, this guy tapped me out like 6 times, which like I've been beaten before, but never that quickly, and never that like. I mean, he didn't even seem like he was trying. He was just like. Everything I did, he was immediately like inverting and blocking and turns out, you know, he's only like 20 or 21, but I think he's a brown belt now, but he's been training since he was like 7, you know. He's already been training 10 plus years and competing, and
when he tripped before he could walk. Exactly.
He won in the adults bracket at 14. He was beating grown men in the jiu-jitsu competitions. And then I looked him up because I was like, it was weird to me after he beat me. I was like, I've never lost that bad to anyone before. Like it messed me up because I'm like, he's 145 pounds and we both know jiu-jitsu. So I'm like, what is going on? And then I look him up. He's like a Pan Am's champion. He's probably going to be one of the next biggest stars in jiu-jitsu. He's like one of Tom DeBlas's top 5, like, you know, guys he's mentoring and training but it really shook me because it was that reminder, like, oh man, like jiu-jitsu works. Like this guy's 145 pounds and he manhandled me. I felt like there was nothing I could do to this guy. And that's the feeling that people have, you know, they're kind of disillusioned when they go to jiu-jitsu. They think, well, I could grapple with somebody. I could ball them up. And then they meet someone who's been doing it for like 3 months. And then it's like, wait a minute, what the heck is going on? And then you run into somebody who's been doing it for 10, 15 years, and there's just nothing you can do.
What's crazy about the little guys, too, is that jiu-jitsu is one of the only combat sports that identifies that body type as an actual factor in the fight. Yep. I think a lot of people, they either want to focus in on it like to a weird degree, like in MMA or in boxing, where it kind of makes sense. Like you want to go against somebody in a similar weight bracket. I think some of the stuff with the UFC, sometimes their weight classes are a little bit skewed. That's a whole other thing. But like in jiu-jitsu, it's one of the only times where it's like, yeah, bigger guys have different problems than smaller guys. What I've noticed about the smaller guys, whether they're just like shorter dudes or dudes with like, you know, skinnier frames, is that their biggest challenge is that they've got to move faster. They know that time is not their friend, and that every second that they're not doing something, that's a second in which a larger opponent in physicality has a very deliberate natural advantage over them. So those are the guys who I fear. There's a kid who just came over. He was a wrestler in high school. I think wrestling, if there's one martial art that really transfers over,
Facts.
that scares the living shit out of me, it's the wrestlers, because they don't go on their back.
No, and it's like peanut butter and jelly. They go together, and you talk about you go to competitions, like just competitions, and everyone's like, you see a guy walk up, like you're like, oh, he's a wrestler. Oh, he's a wrestler. Like he's
got the little hunchback, and he's just kind of like walking over.
Because everyone fears that in jiu-jitsu, like, oh, being out wrestled, like, oh, he's a wrestler. Like, so you just hope that your jiu-jitsu is better than his aggressiveness,
But this kid, this kid is 19. He's probably like, $150 in weight. And I didn't think that he had hit puberty. And I mean, he did what that guy did to you. Like, he just tore me apart, and he's like huffing and puffing like Gollum. And I'm like, just get away from me. Like, I don't know what's happening, but it's crazy. I mean, I just, I finished Breathe by Hickson. And
I just got that. I just started listening to it the other day.
It is so wild. And what I didn't realize was a lot of the history behind that, like that first UFC.
Oh yeah.
Like Hickson, like what's crazy is Hoyce and everyone else, they're like, Hickson is like the most dangerous mother effer on earth.
He's the man. Like he is the man of the family of jiu-jitsu. He's the number one.
But it's still wild. And I mean, you know this from watching that first UFC. Like they intentionally picked Hoyce because they're like, Hoyce is like the skinniest. He's the scrawniest amongst us. He's the weakest. He sucks the most. If we can show that the weakest amongst us can beat all these guys, imagine what these others could do. Yeah. And it's just so wild when, I went and watched all those old fights that Hickson references where Hoyce is going against like Ken Shamrock, professional wrestler, like just a giant compared to him. It's a David and Goliath situation, and all these other guys. It's like it's wild how in the martial arts and combat sports community, you always have these people saying, well, what martial art is better than this, or who could win, this guy versus this guy. I mean, of course, the athlete and the practitioner is always like the biggest factor. But at the same time, it's like, the fact that people are still debating whether or not jiu-jitsu works, or is jiu-jitsu good just for sport, or is it good for a fight? It's like that's pretty much been solved. Like the answer is pretty cut and clear.
Yeah. No, and people like to debate that. I mean, nowadays, like the truth is, I mean, America has so many of these other martial arts here from the movies and from Asia and stuff like that. So there's a lot of those guys who study that stuff and they're really proud of their lineage and history. But I mean, a lot of those martial arts have been watered down now. And if anybody asks me like, what is a martial art that I should get into? I'm like, well, what are you looking for? Like self-defense? I'm like jiu-jitsu. I'm like, you want to become a fighter? I'm like jiu-jitsu, wrestling, and Muay Thai. Like, oh, what about Tai Chi? What about karate? What about no. Just listen what I just told you. Wrestling, Muay Thai.
Just time out with the rest of that. You're just going to be wasting
the rest of it's trash. I mean, great histories. I mean, sure, it's great on television, but in real life, I mean, they give out like, you see these 14, 15-year-old kids with black belts. And I mean, you probably said too, I'll go places, I'll be at Chick-fil-A and I'll see like some kid in there with a black belt and like Taekwondo, and I'm like, I could kick that guy through the window.
If you're wondering whether you, a grown man, can beat a child, I don't think his Taekwondo is going to do much.
I don't think it's going to do much, but I mean, there's kids like those kids that know jiu-jitsu, man. They're better than the adults that don't. I think it's just that realization that in life there's stuff that works and there's stuff that just doesn't work. And there's a whole list of stuff that doesn't work. But even with the jiu-jitsu for self-defense, like you talk about self-defense, and that's kind of what jiu-jitsu is good for. What it's good for in general is that it gives a smaller guy the ability to beat a bigger opponent. And I think that aspect of it gets lost nowadays. People think of it just more of the sport and stuff like that. But most people, you say, what do you do for self-defense? They'll be like, oh, you got to learn Krav Maga. And I'm like, I've got friends who do Krav Maga. I love them, but I know a lot of guys who do Krav Maga, and almost all of them are like obese. Like, it's just like, I mean, it's just the way it is. Like, I mean, my friends that do aren't, but most of them, like, it's one of those catchy, like, ooh, Krav Maga, like, you're going to do this and this. And most of that stuff doesn't work. You know, it's like, but at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, biggest thing that like totally screwed with my mind was I didn't realize that my school was a school that did live rolling every class. And your first opportunity, like you have the option of not rolling, but it's like everyone's going to look at you and they're going to think, well, that person's a pussy. But like, you know, when I was rolling, it was, like when I was rolling for the first time, like immediately I'm thinking back to my Taekwondo days. I'm like, we're not wearing pads. He's obviously beaten me. When will somebody call a timeout? Like, you know, I'm just like I had like a little panic attack. But it's like, it's the only time I've really seen somebody actually have to pressure test what they're working on. And I mean, what's really, what used to bug me a lot is when you would have somebody come in and this is their first class. And like, for me, it was, I've been doing it a few months. Like, I think I've learned a few things and I'm still struggling to take down this person who has like no experience. I had to stop letting that frustrate me, because what I had to realize is this person is not, you know, doing jujitsu. He's not fighting jujitsu with jujitsu. He's fighting to win. It's like you're dealing with
raw strength,
an uncooperative person who just does not want to be embarrassed. And I'm just like, this is as, you know, difficult as it's going to get. When you started up again with BJJ and you were getting regular and you were attending the same school for a longer period of time, you know, what were some of your initial challenges that you found?
Man, well, mine to start was just the weight. Like when I stopped doing BJJ, I think I was like 190. When I came back, I was like 244. So like I was at my like heaviest weight, like, you know, not even half that was muscle, just a big old belly, you know? And so coming back as a bigger guy, like I found just like moving was harder. And, you know, breathing, you know, there's so much, there's cardio and then there's like jujitsu cardio, and you just get so gassed so quick. So I had to get really comfortable with being on my back and people being on top of me, because they could just out move me. They were just so quick. So I developed, I think, a fairly good half guard because I had to out of necessity. So I was like, I'm always on my back. Like I just got to get a half guard down. So I started looking into, you know, Tom DeBlas's half guard domination, Eddie Bravo's lockdown. And you know, I'm like, I'm a big guy. So I was like, I gotta get a good defense. Now I have a pretty good lockdown, but, you know, but that was I think the hardest part for me was just getting back into it. You know, you feel so tired, your body's sore, getting the cardio back, remembering the moves. I mean, it's just like anything else. If you don't do it for a while, like you're not thinking about something, it's just not going to be, you know, second nature. You know, the less you have to think in jiu-jitsu, the better. The more like your body just knows what to do, the more you know what to do. It's just more, you can chain moves together. You don't have to pause. And, you know, so for me, it was a lot of technical stuff, a lot of physical stuff. And then the biggest challenge, I think, too, is when I had left, you know, it was just the same belt as a lot of my friends. And when I came back, they were like way higher belts. I'm like, oh, man, like the mental aspect, like if I had just stayed with it all these years, I'd be where they are. And then you'd have people coming in, they'd be like, I think one time it was like, I've been doing this on and off again for years. And a guy had just started like jujitsu like that day. And I was trying to show him something and he just wasn't listening to me. He's like, we're the same belt. Like, what do you know? And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, bro, you know, I'll strangle you, you know, like,
say it again, man.
You know, so it was just a lot of ego, a lot of just training. And then it's slowly, you know, between losing the weight, between getting better, you know, getting to know the people, you kind of just get in a rotation where it just becomes a part of your life. Like, you know, where a lot of the things that bothered you whenever you're doing something, they don't bother you anymore because you're like, oh, well, I'm going to do this tomorrow. And then the next day and then the next day. So it's just, you start doing it more for you, you know, it just, I got to be here. And a lot of those problems don't matter, you know, as you just keep doing it. You know, if you're only going to be doing it for a short time, then those things will really bother you. You know what people say, or if you have a bad role, you're just like, dang it, like, how did I lose to that guy, you know? But then if you just come back the next day and you're like, oh, I'm going to keep coming back. So
The one thing that I had to tell myself was like I had to shed a lot of really bad habits. One of them being like what I do think was one of the things about Taekwondo that maybe is a bigger like systemic problem is the rapid belt advancement.
Oh
Because
yeah.
like when I started Taekwondo up again in like middle school through high school, I got pretty far going to about 3-4 classes a week and doing a few tournaments within a couple of years. And it was pretty rapid succession. I also did like these weekend, like these summer, like intensive camps where you could go up a belt in like 1 week.
Accelerate.
So
Yeah. Super accelerate.
yeah, I'm thinking, well, I'm the best person ever. I started in September and I didn't get my first stripe until January. And like a lot of people would look at me, they're like, you've been doing, like my coworkers were like, you've been doing this for how long and you're still a white belt and you've only got one stripe and you're doing this all the time. Your nose is messed up. There's cuts on your face. You've got so many like handprint bruises on your forearms. You look like Rihanna when she was with Chris Brown. Like, what's up with you? I mean, it's a completely different thing. But for me, one, like the biggest issue I had to deal with was the fact that I could not handle people being on top of me, being in my personal space.
Yep.
Like the first time I had a grown man's crotch in my face, I wanted to scream.
Little north-south action.
Yeah, like I'm just like, this is like, he's getting a little bit excited right now and I don't know what's happening. That was the first thing I had to deal with because I had some pretty severe panic attacks coming that. I mean, what ultimately led to my medical separation from the guard was a car accident a few years before I separated. And that messed with my neck. I gained weight from all the pain medications I was on. Like it wrecked me physically. And it messed with me mentally. So my big thing was like, I just need to get in a routine. I'm like, I'm here. I'm the older, like millennial type dude. It's like, I just need to show up and maybe I'll be halfway good. So my goal was at the beginning, go to 2 classes a week and maybe avoid that Wednesday one. But after a couple months, I was like, you know what? Like I want to go every night. So I was going 3-4 days a week. Yeah. It became really weird because I'm like, I'm not flexible. So I'm like, how am I going to do half this stuff? The first time I actually felt super proud of myself was the first time I rubber guarded somebody.
Oh, that's a great feeling.
Yeah. I was like, I have just turned into like, a yogi master or something. Yeah. I'm like, this guy is trapped here. It's like, yeah, now you're dealing with the situation you don't want to be in, huh? And that was the point where I'm like, I'm actually picking things up. I'm actually developing a lot of like the comfort on the mat that I wanted. But what I began to really notice over time was like, it was actually impacting my life off the mats. I was eating better. The biggest thing for me was I was calmer. And it wasn't just that I'm so tired I can't deal with things. It's that, and it's in Hicks and Gracie's book, which, I mean, when you get to some of the stuff, like towards the end of the book, you're going to be crying your eyes out. There's some deep stuff in there. But like the part where he's just like, combat is life accelerated with heavier consequences. Like it really began to dial down a lot of things where I was putting a lot of unnecessary pressure. It's crazy. And I mean, with what I've really admired about kind of watching your journey through a distance is that you have really jumped into it as a lifestyle, seeing you going and like meeting. Did you meet Hoyce or somebody else?
Yeah, no, I know Hoyce, Gracie, his son, Conrad Gracie. Met him a few times now. Great guys. Part of the association. I think I met Eddie Bravo, Gordon Ryan, Tom DeBlas. We just met Frankie Edgar, just a bunch of people.
It's like meeting the freaking Avengers.
Yeah, no, it really is. And I always make a point of asking them, like, how to get better. Like they have a Q&A. I'm like, hey, what do you do? And almost everybody says just drilling. They always say drilling to get better at jiu-jitsu. I usually ask them something funny so they remember me next time. Like I asked first time I met Hoyce Gracie, he's super intimidating whenever you meet him because he's very serious. And he was like, does anyone have any questions for me? And like nobody is saying anything. And I'm like,
No one wants to look dumb.
Yeah, and I'm sitting there like I'm sitting there like, so no one's gonna ask Hoist Gracie a question. Like, the man came here to train us and to ask, answer questions. So I was just like, well, shoot, I'm gonna ask him a question. I was like, hey, Mr. Gracie, like, was what it was like, was Shamrock like covered in baby oil whenever you were fighting him? And he looks at me and he's just like, I didn't put baby oil on him. And I'm like, what? I'm like, I'm not saying you did, but did somebody put baby oil on him? And he's like, and every time I see him, I can just tell he's like, oh, it's that baby oil guy again. I'm like, he just looks super greasy. I don't know.
He just walks on stage, just glimmering immediately.
Glimmering, yeah, just soaked in yeah, he's a great guy. He travels so much, and he's always training, always focusing on the self-defense aspect and trying to get people to remember that, he says this thing about like, this jiu-jitsu has become so much of a sport now that, we look at it like, say if a big guy comes by and like pinches your girlfriend on the butt and you're going to say, hold on, baby, let me go handle this. Excuse me, sir. How much do you weigh? What belt are you? Oh, sorry, honey. He's out of my weight class. He's a higher belt. I can't face him. No, you got to be able to defend yourself and your family and stuff. So he really focuses on the self-defense, on the stuff that works with the strikes and with the takedowns and that part of it. And I really appreciate that. Cause I love sport jiu-jitsu, but I'm always reminded of the physical altercations of life. So I want to be able to, get ready to smash some heads and not get hit. So.
Yeah, I mean, this has been the only time where I've actually felt like if anything were to happen, God forbid, I'm actually going to be safe. And there have been some situations like in downtown Milwaukee with the homeless or with drunk people or with something or with somebody who is just I did have an altercation recently where somebody was attempting to start a fight with me. Luckily, it was a situation where because I was the calmer person, it's like I can tell that this dude is fronting. Like you can, it's so weird. I was a friend of mine who's a blue belt. We were rolling the other day, and it was probably like the most intense roll we ever had with each other. And I was proud, and he was proud because he's like, "You've really advanced a lot." This is usually he's like, usually I have to hold myself back not to destroy you immediately, but this time he actually had me on the run. It was a good conversation, but what I mentioned was it's like I feel like. With the people at my school, and I've gone to some other schools in the area, like Neutral Ground, Milwaukee. I've got some really good friends there. Like I like going to their open mat to get a little bit of a different experience with people. But it's like, I'm like, I feel like I'm not the best student in my school. I feel like everyone here can still kind of kick my ass regularly. And the thing he told me was, but dude, and I mentioned the story about the Marine earlier. It's like, that's your average person. Your average person who you're going to get into a physical altercation with is not here on the mats 3-4 days a week.
Exactly.
And it's those situations where it's like with the individual who rushed towards me, who got in my space, who is gesturing to trying to get me to react. It's like, I'm looking at this person and I see right through them. And it's like one of those moments where it's like, yes, I know I can destroy this little man if something were to happen, but because there are repercussions for everything. It's like, is he worth the police report? Is he worth going to court for? Is he worth, potentially injuring myself or something? I don't know if this guy has a knife or anything. I don't know what's going on. Luckily, I was able to bring down the altercation, but it wasn't because it's like, I don't want to fight this person. It's like, this is the first step of it. It's dealing with that immediate fear of the other person. And the person who's confident and calm is the person who's ultimately going to win that situation. That was when I was like,
you're not afraid. You're not afraid to fight, but it's like you use your that calmness to be like, you can take care of yourself, but to de-escalate it. Like, I'm gonna give this guy. And the truth is, most guys, once they're intoxicated, even when they're intoxicated for the most part, do not want to fight. Mm-hmm. Nobody really, unless a few people actually want to get in a physical altercation. And the ones that do usually aren't the guys who have been in fights before. So if you give a guy like an out in a fight, he'll probably take it. If you give him a way to get out of it without looking like a punk, You just de-escalate the whole situation. Be like, hey man, it's all good, bro. Just let him, you kind of almost let him be the bigger guy. Like, hey man, it's all cool. It's cool, man. You should, because you don't want to get in that point where you have to put a guy down, and who knows what happens,
You don't know if his friends are going to come by. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. Like, the whole thing, like, it's only as good as until it stops being good.
Yeah.
When did you get to the point where you're like, I'm actually learning something. I'm actually doing pretty well compared to how I was when I started. When was that realization moment for you?
I think, it's like, it was hard for me to tell, because it's like, if you train with the same group of people, you're always like, you guys are both getting better at the same time. So you're just like, it's hard to see how much you're growing. But I think for me, it was like when I started at first, it was like a slow thing. And then when I just started lasting longer from not being tapped out by people. And then when I just started tapping out, I heard this on the Joe Rogan podcast. He's like, if you want to get better at jiu-jitsu, just start strangling white belts. So I was always trying to roll with the better people, being like, oh, I'm gonna challenge myself by this. And then I'd, get beaten. But I was like, I think I did good. But I just started really focusing on just learning how to manhandle like white belts and get really good at submissions. And then when I would roll against the higher belts, really just focus on staying calm, escaping, and being more dominant. And I think the first time I tapped out this purple belt, and my friend saw it, and he just looks at me like, I don't know what happened. It was like it's like one of those moments like when you're rolling with somebody and you do good, you just hope someone else sees it,
Oh my God.
So somebody else knows that can see your progress. It's not just you being like, oh, I did this. And everyone's like, oh, sure. Like, oh, sure you did.
Dude, first time I heel hooked somebody. Yeah, we at my school, we do a specific 45-minute class on Tuesdays, which is all leg locks.
Yeah.
And I suck at that. Like I've got like these meaty thighs, and I'm just like, I'm just from the waist down. It's like, I'm just trying not to be like, in a position where I'm going to get like a leg cramp. I was rolling with a friend of mine the other day. He's a blue belt. He's an incredibly good athlete. I heel hooked him in one of the rounds and submitted him, and nobody saw it. And I'm just like, did it happen? Like, this is a glorious moment. I got everything in place. My feet were good. I just did it naturally. And I'm like, nobody's there. But I have to tell myself, but I know I did it. And he knows I did it.
Yeah. And that's the thing with when you start going against better people and stuff like that, there's I realize this now too, where sometimes when you're rolling with higher belts, they're not going very hard on you. Like, they're going like with just enough energy to like keep the motions and let you work, and then sometimes they'll just get the submission and go to the next thing. But the other times you'll be rolling with them, and for sure, like, in your heart, like, oh, that guy didn't want, that guy doesn't want me to win. So there's just times. So this time I was rolling with this guy. I think it was kind of like a lighthearted, medium lighthearted roll. I think he was aware that I could be a threat. At the same time, I could tell maybe not to him. It wasn't that big of a deal. And he has my back, and I don't know. I think I just blacked out. I went like Steven from Moon Knight on this. I was just like, and I came to, and I had his back somehow, and I just like had my arms around his throat, and I was pulling that head back, sinking it deeper, and I tap him with like a rear naked choke, and I look over my friend Brad's in the corner like, just like like we just like discovered goals like did that really just happen? And but then I noticed, and then we rolled again. Then I got him like a heel hook or something. But every time after that, I could tell the roll just amplified like tenfold. Now it was not like, oh, I'm just gonna roll with this guy, and now it's like I could tell the pressure for him. Like, he can't lose to me now. You know what I'm saying? Like,
it's happened. You can't go back to before that happened.
No, you can't go back. So now this isn't like, these aren't lighthearted rolls. These are like, I can't lose to this cat, Now I'm in my mind, I'm like, it's possible. Is it possible that I could beat this guy? No, I got to try, And so there's just a few experiences like that and then I went to a few competitions, and I think the biggest thing about jiu-jitsu and in life, it's a mental thing. You have to have confidence and aggression. And if you have those two things, a healthy confidence and a healthy amount of aggression, you're going to do great. But that's the thing with jiu-jitsu is like, getting confidence with other people who do jiu-jitsu, especially people you don't know how good they are. Like, you know, with me in general, if I'm walking around the street and I just see anybody, I'm like, man, I could probably strangle them. I'm good, right? But then you put yourself in a jiu-jitsu context with a guy across from you. You don't know his belt. You don't know how good he is. Now your mind's spinning like, can I beat that guy? What if he does this? What if he's a wrestler? What if he knows, you know? And so it's having that confidence to just go out there against anybody and try your best. And then aggression, not being scared, because, you know, in jiu-jitsu, you know, you hesitate, you start getting nervous, your stomach drops, you get all dry mouthed, and, you know, you hesitate and you get murdered on the mat. So, and if you can keep a high aggression, high confidence, you'll do great. And when I would go to these tournaments, I had almost that kind of like that ignorant level of confidence, where I was kind of like, I don't know what I don't know, so I'm just going to go out there and give it a shot. Like, I wasn't even really that nervous. I was more like excited because I'm just like, oh, this is going to be fun. And then the more you do it, you start getting more nervous, because then it's like, oh, wait a minute, here we go again, you know. But I got in a few matches where, you know, I rolled with one guy and, you know, I got him in an Americana, and he didn't want to tap, and I ended up just tearing his shoulder out of socket, like in front of everybody.
Damn.
And he had to like tap with his feet, and it was just wild. Like, I was just like, you know, and at our school, we always say, before you roll, you know, how do we roll? You know, we say no ego, you know, and how we do submissions, we say slow and easy. That's kind of like our mantra before we roll with each other. And I'm out there, you know, in my mind rolling with this guy at a tournament, like, how do we do submissions? I'm like, slow and easy. I'm like, ah! I'm like breaking this guy's shoulder out. Like,
where was the ref?
Yeah, well, my coach, one of my coaches, he actually called it. Like, he did. The ref didn't even see the guy tapping, because the guy had been like trying to kip. I was on a side control, and the guy was trying to kip escape the whole time. So when he was tapping with his feet, it just looked like he was just trying to escape, like he had been. And my coach was like, he's tapping. You know, just, and another time I had a guy, I put him in a lockdown. You know, this guy came at me like it was he was dipping during the competition, like it was a country boy. He had a pile of dip in his mouth, and he's like, yeah. And I could tell it was his first competition, and he came at me like, I could tell his adrenaline was going 100%. Like, he thought he was in a fight to the death. And he tackles me, and I'm like, okay, here we go. Like, I wasn't expecting him to come out like that. And I throw a lockdown on his leg, and I extend it. I'm trying to go for an elevator sweep, and I hear his knee pop, like pop, and it was loud. It sounded like a gunshot. And I looked at him. I was like, hey man, are you all right? And he's like, I'm fine. And I'm like, okay, cool. So then I elevate his leg, getting ready to do the sweep, and I hear all the muscles in his leg tear, like. And you know how if you have like your body's touching someone else's body, you can like feel what's happening. Like, I had like my shins on his shins, so I could feel his leg, and I could feel the ligaments and muscles in his legs tearing.
Oh, that's so gross. That's so gross.
I got it on video. I'll show you sometime. But I was just like, I go, dude, are you okay? Because I'm like, I can feel it, and I'm like, there's no way this guy's leg's okay.
This dude's like the Black Knight from Monty Python.
Yeah. He looks at me. He looks at me. He goes, I think I need a minute. And I was like this. I was like, no, ref, it's over. I was like, he's done. He said he needs a minute. It's over. I called the ref over, and the ref's like, oh, did he tap? And I'm like, no, but he said he needs a minute. I'm pretty sure his leg's destroyed. The guy is like, I didn't tap. It's not over. I didn't tap. So the ref, and I look at the ref, and I'm like, but he says that he needs a minute. I'm pretty sure he can't walk. So the ref's like, all right, we'll get up, go to the center of the mat. We'll start the match again. The guy stands up. He could barely walk. He's like limping to the center of the mat. We go back into the half guard. I throw back into the lockdown. At this point, I just let it go. I'm like, I'm not going to hurt this guy anymore. I end up just UPA him over and just stay on top of him. I win by points. And afterwards, he had to go straight to the hospital. His leg was inflamed. I'm pretty sure, you know, he probably couldn't walk again for, you know, months. I mean, his leg was completely destroyed. And but it just goes to show, like, the ego sometimes involved in combat sports and jiu-jitsu is so much that it's like, you know, people don't want to tap. They don't want to lose. but I mean, you can get seriously injured, like, and it's just insane. It's not worth going to the hospital over.
Yeah, there was a moment where like when I finally got into a routine where I'm doing this like every minute I can. At one point, I was going during lunch breaks.
Yeah.
I was in this mindset of I'm just going to try and go to as many classes as possible. I'm never going to tap. And the first major injury I got was I completely threw out my back. Like it was.
I remember that. Yeah. We were talking about that.
It was rough because I couldn't sleep. I could barely drive. I mean, taking a shit was a next level challenge for me. I had to take a couple weeks off for that. And I went and saw a chiropractor. I had to go see this dude twice a week for 3 weeks.
Jeez.
And luckily he really fixed me up. He really did a great job. But he looked at me. He's like, "Why are you doing this?" And I'm like, "Oh, I just need to do something. I need a hobby and all this other stuff." He's like, No. I'm not questioning the jiu-jitsu. Why are you going as hard as you are? What are you trying to do? And I was like, I don't want people to think I'm weak. I don't want people to think I suck or I'm not into this. He's like, "Are you trying to be an MMA fighter or something?" I'm like, "No." He's like, then just fall back to why you want to do it. And it was one of those moments where I'm like, who are you to talk to me about my life? And then I was like, well, he actually makes some good points. And when I dialed it back, when I began to accept, like, tap, like that was a big thing for me. Tap.
It's free. Tap. It's free. It's free. Just tap.
Yeah. Like when you get injured, take some time off and then go back as soon as you can. Like, it was one of those moments where for me, it was like, refocus on the actual purpose and put the ego aside, because like, I want to do this for as long as possible, but I don't want to be one of those guys who has to get like, an hemorrhage disc surgery or something like that, or replace knees. It's like, I already have enough like damages and shit. It's like, I don't need to add more intentionally into that. Like, I can't bend one of my fingers, but like, much, but it's like, I don't want to like injure my neck again. That was a big thing for me. That was a deal I had to make with my fiance. It's like, she was worried. It's like, you can't do boxing because of your head, because of all the concussions and stuff I had.
Right.
So boxing was out, and it's like, if jiu-jitsu, it's like, you better protect your neck. And I had to make that promise to her. So at first she was like, when I was first starting, like, she was supportive, but extremely hesitant. And then when I threw out my back and it was like, I was actually incredibly worried. She was like, maybe you just need to stop. But then when I actually kind of let that go, and I'm taking better care of myself and I'm more honest with myself about things, now it's gotten to the point where not only do I think my relationship with jiu-jitsu is better, but also she's not like, "Oh, you should stop this." Now she's incredibly supportive because she trusts me to make a better decision for myself. And it's, it's moments like that where it's like, maybe that's the inner peace I was looking for.
No, man, it is. It's like, it's one of those things where you can go, it's like being sprung for a chick. You can go head over heels for jiu-jitsu and then just get your heart broken or your neck broken. You gotta have a healthy relationship with boundaries. And it's hard, especially as a dude, you go in there and you got another dude on top of you. And, a lot of sports or a lot of things you can just talk about, and, it's hard to prove who's better, but with like football back in the day, like I used to play football in high school, and someone else could say that. And you never know who was better back in the day. But you talk about jiu-jitsu, it's like we can find out who's better right now.
The math don't lie.
And who's better means I could kill you. And that's a lot of ego. That's hard to rein in. And when you get somebody on top, there's times where I've had people on me and I held submit, they've been, arm bars or chokes. And I've been like, can I hold out? Like, is it worth it? Like, just because you don't want to feel that way, but it's, at the end of the day, it ain't worth it, to have to go to the hospital and stop doing what you love. Like those guys in those competition, my coach told me, he's like, I just don't think people like losing to you. I don't know if it's your face or your laugh or what, but people just do not want to tap to you. And I don't know what it is. Cause I always love seeing after competitions, like two guys who just duke it out. They like bro hug. And there's like that mutual, like Rocky and Apollo respect. Like if I start beating somebody in jiu-jitsu, they're basically like, "Hey man, you're going to have to kill me." You're going to have to
do it.
And I don't know why it is that way, but it's like most of the time when I roll or go to competitions, I have to like, they gave me the nickname when I went back to my gym. One of the guys there is a buddy of mine. He was like, man, you're like, I'm going to start calling you the surgeon, dude. You keep sending everybody to the hospital. And they gave me that as my nickname. And I put that as my Instagram handle. That way, we have to roll in a competition, man. And I might as well call the hospital. And the thing is, I'm not trying to send you there, but once I get a submission, I know you're not going to want to tap, so I'm going to have to break it.
You should just make eye contact with them. It's like, this is your choice. You did this to yourself.
Yeah. The last guy I told my friend, I was just like, bro, don't do this. And I felt like I was fighting Ricky Bobby. He was like, break it, Pepe Le Pew. Break it. I'm like, why? Like, what the heck?
Or Revenge of the Sith. It's like, it's over, Anakin. I have the high ground.
Don't try it. You underestimate my power. So it's one of those things. Just got to keep that ego in check. And you're like me, man. We want to do this for the rest of our lives, and we like the exercise. We like the whole lifestyle. So it's got to keep the ego in check and keep a healthy amount of rolling in and injury prevention and just listening to your body. Otherwise, our girls in our lives going to be like, hey, you got to stop doing that. This is a negative thing,
The goal is to avoid that conversation for as long as possible.
And I think you hit the point. What's worse is when you tell people like what belt you are, they'd be like, what belt are you? Be like, I'm a white belt. Like I was talking to Eddie Bravo in Florida about this, and he was just like, man, I couldn't wait to be a blue belt. And this is Eddie Bravo talking, like the master, right? He's like, I couldn't wait to be a blue belt. He's like, that's all I could think about. That's all I could dream about. And he's like, because everyone knows what a white belt is and everyone knows what a black belt is, but everything in between, nobody knows anything about. So it's like, all you know is if you're a white belt, you suck. And if you're a black belt, you're the best. He's like, I just don't want to be a white belt. I don't want to be known as someone who sucks. So that's like the perspective to have when you're in it. Just keep grinding. Like you said, you show up like you're dating Chris Brown, coming into work all banged up. Like, what do you do when you leave here? I'm like,
fight homeless people. Duh.
Yeah, I fight people in a bathrobe, man. Like, come at me, bro.
Every time I used to walk into the office and they would look at me like with a black eye or a busted nose or something, like I suddenly understood that movie Fight Club more. It's like,
exactly.
Yeah, people do notice this. It's like it does get to the point where it's like they're going to question it, but I mean it's just part of it all, and I really like it. It really, I think the one good thing is that some people call jiu-jitsu a fad because it's grown so fast. I think that's a point where it's like, you know what, that means that people are noticing it. And I think a lot more people are starting to understand. And I mean, it gets a whole new different type of respect. I mean,
100%. Like it's gaining so much traction now between ADCC, between all these competitions and organizations and ONE and the UFC and all these other martial art organizations and clubs and teams and gyms that people are starting to give it the amount of respect as an art and as a style of fighting and as a just something that's more common to talk about. Like I hate when you tell somebody, if I tell somebody what kind of martial art I do, the next day they'll get it wrong. I'll be like, I do Thai boxing, I do Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, I do Gracie Jiu Jitsu, right? You see that guy the next day, he's like, oh, how was karate? How was Taekwondo? And I'm like, bro, I do not do those. I do not do that. I do Thai boxing and I do jiu-jitsu. And you see him again. Oh, how was your karate practice? And you're just like, you want a free lesson? Like, I will give you a free lesson in jiu-jitsu. Like, but it's getting more popularity because these promotions, and I'm excited because I think it's something that's really good for people in general. And I tell you what, there's something about the sport. It's like, going to the same school as somebody, or, maybe studying the same field as somebody. But there's something about doing jiu-jitsu that brings people together. Like I could just meet somebody and the only thing we could have in common is jiu-jitsu. And that is such a bridge, compared to everything else in your life. Like I meet somebody who does jiu-jitsu. We immediately have, endless things to talk about, endless going back and forth. And there's just a bond that's there. Like it brings people together so quick. And
dude, if everyone did jiu-jitsu, there would be world peace.
There would be, because there would be. Gordon Ryan would be our king, and there would be peace on earth. But there's just that kind of like that chilledness that comes with doing jiu-jitsu. And I saw everybody I meet to be like, oh, what's something that you love? I'm like, jiu-jitsu, man, you should try it. But a lot of people are still like, oh, I wouldn't want to wrestle with a sweaty man. And I'm like, yeah, it can be pretty gay at times.
What I hate are the guys who are just like, man, I don't know if I could hold myself back. I might accidentally kill a guy. And it's like,
oh yeah,
up.
Yeah. No, you're not. I think I would just freak out and punch a drill sergeant. I just freak out and hit you. I'm like, no, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. Like it's and that's the thing is a lot of people with fighting, especially guys, like they have an idea that they can fight, but unless you train, most dudes can't fight. You might get a lucky shot, but you throw a double leg on somebody and just start running a clinic on them, and they're just like, stop. There's nothing they can do.
You got lucky. No fights would ever end up on the ground.
Yeah, like almost every fight ends up on the ground.
It always gets to that point. Well, dude, I think this is a great place to wrap it up. As I mentioned at the beginning of the show, your support when I was really going through those rough periods, and the support you still kind of give me as a brother, and all this has just been, just really incredible for me. And I do really, really appreciate it, because this hit me on levels that I had not felt really since my first year in the Army. Like it hit me emotionally, it hit me spiritually, it hit me physically. It's like, I have to carry this with me all day. The humiliation, the fear, the pain, eventually that turns into, just being confident. That turns into, being stronger. That goes into seeing it like from a view of like, you're getting better every day instead of you're just getting hurt all the time. Like it has been a great thing for me. And that's why I just want as many people as possible just, become familiar with this. And even if it's not jiu-jitsu for some people, even if it's just something else that challenges you on all three of those different fields of being, I think that's the problem with a lot of folks. It's like what Mike Tyson says when it comes to social media. It's like, a lot of people just, they're not afraid of getting punched, as Mike Tyson would say it. It's like, they're not afraid of getting punched in the face anymore. It's kind of like that. And it's like, I've made friends through jiu-jitsu who otherwise I would have never encountered, and even
never would have met these people.
We wouldn't have had the friendship that we have. And for me, that's the real empowering thing about it.
Yeah, I appreciate you hearing that, man. I love motivating people with jiu-jitsu, and it's done a lot in my life, and I'm seeing what's done in your life. And you go to a gym, you got a girl, you may have like a 34-year-old single mom in there just trying to get some confidence back. You go in there, you'll have, like you said, like a jacked Marine guy who's just trying to get better at killing. You go in there and you'll have some you'll have that a crackhead from 7-Eleven in there. You'll have an 11-year-old kid who's just trying to do something after school. You'll have a bunch of just regular people just trying to get better in life, and you put them all together and you just start progressing and learning and growing. And you walk in with all your troubles, and there's days where I just like, man, I do not want to go train. But then I remember that I'm like, I have never left jiu-jitsu worse than when I went in. 100%. I always leave better than when I went in. And that's something you can't buy. So I'm like, I just get up and go, so we're just spreading the word, brother. Spread the word. Man.
Well, Justin, I greatly appreciate you. I know you've got an Instagram page and stuff like that. You want to pitch anything?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, Justin, the Surgeon Hayward. Like I said, my tag, just post. Got some posts on there. I'm still getting used to the social media thing, but I usually post my travels of meeting celebs and hitting them up with hard hitting questions like how do I get better? I want to be like you.
Did Ken Shamrock have baby oil on?
Yeah, I witnessed. Hopefully I don't get sued for this. I've witnessed what goes on with marijuana and 10 planets. I tell you, I've seen it.
I don't think they're hiding that much.
Yeah, they're not hiding. It's legal in most of the states they're at. But for me, honestly, those are the coolest guys, though. Like I love those 10 Planet brothers. Like they're all so chill. And one thing I love about them is that they don't have a belt system. Really, they don't wear gis. So everyone's kind of. They got colored rash guards, but everyone's equal when you walk in and you start. So you could go against the instructor, you go against some guy, and you don't know who's who. And so I like that sometimes, just being like, hey, let's just see what happens, But yeah, I'm on Instagram, and just hit me up, and let's do this again sometime. I appreciate you having me on, and excited to see you keep going and keep pursuing your dreams and getting better. And We gotta catch up sometime and hit up a tournament or something, or go to a seminar.
We gotta roll together at some point.
I know, like Rocky and Apollo.
It's gotta happen. It's gotta happen. Well, dude, I appreciate you. And folks, if you appreciate conversations like this, like the one that Justin and I were having, if you want to continue to hear, the journeys that we all go on in this great challenge called life, please go ahead and do me a favor. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, at HeyRemso, HeyRemso. And please, it costs you nothing, but it means everything to me. A 5-star rating and review across Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, wherever you're listening to us across Al Gore's amazing internet. Helps keep this conversation going. As always, I'm Remso W. Martinez. Be safe, be good. Good night.